The transmission did not arrive through any human channel. It simply appeared. Every screen on Earth, from the largest billboard in Tokyo to the cracked phone of a goat herder in the Andes, lit up at the same second with the same alien face. Lord Varex of the Draxan Imperium had a long gray jaw, eyes the color of wet iron, and a voice that crawled through 81 human languages at once. He gave Earth 72 hours to surrender. In Geneva, Admiral Daniel Hart was halfway through a cup of cold soup when the message hit. He set the spoon down slowly. He did not look surprised. He looked like a man who had been waiting a long time for a phone call, and the phone had finally rung. Around him, the United Defense Command Room was already coming apart at the edges. Officers shouted into headsets. A French general slammed his fist on the table. A diplomat from Kenya was trying to call the Secretary General and getting only static because every communication line on the planet was choking on the same alien signal. Commander Reva Lynn pushed through the crowd and reached Hart's chair. She was small, sharp-eyed, with a streak of gray at her temple that had not been there last year. She did not salute. They were past saluting. Solar arrays caught the fleet, she said. Just past Mars. About 400 ships. Battleships. Mostly carriers. 80 heavy cruisers in the front line. The rest are support. Hart nodded once. Behind them, Lieutenant Ben Carter was running between 3 workstations like a man trying to put out 3 fires with 1 bucket. He was 26 years old and looked younger when he was scared, which was now. He stopped beside Hart and held out a tablet. Sir, the Draxan broadcast is repeating. Every 20 minutes. They're saying the same thing in every dialect on the planet, even some dead ones. They want a planetary surrender signal sent on their own frequency. And if we don't, Ben swallowed. They'll glass the surface. Start with the cities. They listed them, sir. By population. New York, Lagos, Mumbai, Shanghai, Lahore, Sao Paulo. They have the order written down. Hart took the tablet, looked at it for 2 seconds, and handed it back. Give me the broadcast room, he said. Ben blinked. Sir, the global broadcast room. The one we don't talk about. I want a clean line to every Draxan receiver in the system, and I want it in 8 minutes. Reva looked at him. There was a question in her face, but she did not ask it. She just walked off to make it happen. Outside the bunker, the world was already cracking. Crowds gathered in every capital, some praying, some screaming, some simply standing in the street looking up at a sky they suddenly did not trust. Stock markets fell through the floor and kept going. A church bell in Krakow rang for an hour, and no one stopped it. In a small town in Argentina, a baker kept baking bread because he did not know what else to do with his hands. In orbit beyond Mars, Lord Varex stood on the curved bridge of his flagship, the Iron Throat. His officers moved around him in slow practice steps. The Draxan Imperium had eaten 160 civilizations in 5,000 years. They had a routine, the ultimatum, the broadcast, the waiting, the slaughter, if needed. It almost never needed to come to slaughter. Most species begged before the second day. A junior officer approached Varex with his head low. My lord, the humans have not yet replied. They will. Their leaders are silent. Their governments are arguing. There is no unified voice, my lord. They cannot even agree on a single language. Varex showed his teeth. In Draxan culture, this was not a smile. It was something older and colder. They will pick a voice, he said. Fear teaches faster than parents. He turned back to the great window. Earth was a small blue dot from here, no bigger than a grape held at arm's length. He had eaten worlds bigger than that one before breakfast. He almost felt sorry for it. Down in the bunker beneath Geneva, Admiral Hart walked into the broadcast room. The walls were gray concrete, soundproofed. A single chair sat in front of a single camera. Reva stood by the door. Ben stood near the technician, hands shaking a little. The technician was an old woman with white hair pulled back hard against her skull. She had built half this room with her own tools 20 years ago, when no one else believed it would ever be needed. Line is open, Admiral, she said. Direct to the Draxan flagship. Every Draxan ship will hear it. So will every receiver on Earth. So will, probably, half the listening posts in this arm of the galaxy. Hart sat down. He did not straighten his uniform. He did not clear his throat. He looked into the camera the way a farmer looks at a field before a long winter. Patch me through, he said. The red light on the camera turned green. Across hundreds of millions of kilometers, On the bridge of the Iron Throat, Lord Varex turned his iron eyes toward the main screen as Earth's reply finally arrived. Admiral Hart leaned forward, just slightly, and spoke 2 words in a calm, almost gentle voice. "Come closer." Then the line cut. For a long moment, the Draxon bridge was silent. Officers looked at each other. A junior aide laughed, thinking it was a joke or a translation error. Lord Varex did not laugh. He stood very still, staring at the dark screen. Then he gave the order to advance. 20 years before the Draxon ultimatum, a quiet astronomer in Chile named Dr. Helen Voss noticed something strange in the long-range telescope data. A pattern of faint heat signatures, moving in slow, lazy arcs through the outer dark. Not comets. Not natural. She did not publish her findings. She walked into a small gray building in Santiago, asked for a man whose name was not in any phone book, and showed him her notebook. That meeting was the beginning. Now, 2 decades later, Helen Voss was no longer young. Her hair had gone the color of old paper. Her hands had small tremors when she was tired. But her eyes were still the same eyes that had spotted the Draxon scout patterns in a wash of static, and those eyes were now fixed on a wall of monitors deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The bunker was called Site 11, though no one in the world could find it on any map. 2 kilometers of seawater above, 300 meters of rock below that, a long shaft, a long elevator, and then a wide, low room full of soft humming machines that did not show up on any inventory. Reva Lynn walked into Site 11 with the dust of Geneva still on her boots. Ben Carter followed her, still wide-eyed at the size of the place. He had read about it in classified files. Reading about it was different from standing in it. Helen looked up from her console. "He really said it on open broadcast?" she asked. "He really did," Reva answered. Helen made a small sound that was almost a laugh. "Good. The whole galaxy heard it, then." Ben could not stop himself. "Doctor, with respect, the whole galaxy also heard us tell a 5,000-year-old empire to come closer. Are we sure that was wise?" Helen turned her old eyes on him. "Lieutenant, do you know what a wolf does when a bear walks into its forest?" "No, ma'am. It does not run, and it does not fight openly. It waits. It learns the bear. It picks the moment. And when the bear is between the trees, it bites the throat." She turned back to her screens. "We have been the wolf for 20 years. Today is the bite." The screens around her told a story that no human civilian had ever been allowed to see. The asteroid belt was not just rocks anymore. Hidden inside roughly 2,000 of those rocks were kinetic mass drivers, each one capable of throwing a tungsten slug at speeds that would punch through a battleship's shielding like a finger through wet paper. They had been placed there one at a time, over 15 years, by unmanned mining drones that the rest of the world had been told were searching for rare metals. The moon's far side hid something else. A long line of rail-gun batteries, dug into the dust, powered by small fusion plants. Officially, the moon program had been about helium-3 mining. Unofficially, it had been about angles. Every gun was angled to cover the standard approach lanes that a Draxon-style fleet would use to enter the inner system. Mars held the heaviest weapons. Beneath the red dust of Olympus Mons, an entire underground complex hummed with quiet power. Plasma lances, long-range torpedoes, and the deepest secret of all, a project Helen had spent 10 years building, sitting cold and dark in a sealed chamber. They called it the Quiet Net. Ben stared at the diagrams. "We did all this. While the world was arguing about plastic straws. We did all this." "The world was supposed to argue about plastic straws," Reva said. That was the cover. A planet that argues about plastic straws does not look like a planet that builds star killers. A red light blinked on Helen's main console. She tapped it. "Vanguard movement," she said. "The Draxon front line is advancing past Mars orbit. Their carriers are forming a wedge. Standard Imperial assault pattern. Page 47 of their tactical manual." "They have a manual?" Ben asked. "They have several. We have copies of all of them." Helen smiled without humor. "We bought them from a freelance trader near Centauri 16 years ago. Cost us a freighter of pure platinum. Cheapest deal humanity ever made." Reva moved to the central command chair. Above her, a holographic map of the solar system glowed in soft blue. Tiny red shapes were the Draxon fleet, moving slowly inward. Tiny green shapes, scattered across the asteroid belt and the moons, were the human weapons coming online. The map showed something the Draxan scanners would never show. The Draxan ships were not advancing into empty space. They were advancing into a closing fist. Activation sequence, Reva said. Helen's hands moved across the console. Asteroid drivers, warm. Lunar batteries, warm. Mars complex, warm. Drone clouds at Europa and Ganymede, warm. Quiet net, standby. Wait on the quiet net, Reva ordered. Last card. Last hand. Understood. On the bridge of the Iron Throat, Lord Varex watched the small blue planet grow slowly larger in his window. His scanners showed nothing unusual. A few mining stations. Some old satellites. A primitive defense grid in low orbit. Nothing that should worry a Draxan battle group. He almost felt cheated. A surrender would have been more interesting than this silence. He turned to his fleet master. Bring us into final attack range. Target the major cities first. Begin with the western continent. Make it loud. The other humans should see what happens to those who do not bow. The fleet master bowed and gave the order. Now, Reva said softly. The fist closed. The first kinetic slug left its hidden rock at 12% the speed of light. It was the size of a coffee table and weighed about as much as a small car. By the time the Draxan scanners registered it as a threat, it had already crossed half the distance to its target. By the time the shields tried to react, it had already passed through the lead carrier's bow, through 6 decks, through the reactor core, and out the other side, leaving a clean glowing tunnel of melted metal in its wake. The carrier did not explode. Carriers in films explode. Real ships, when their hearts are punched out, simply die. Lights went dark. Engines went cold. The great vessel began to drift sideways, dead in space. While inside it, the Draxan crew choked on vacuum because the slug had also taken the air with it on the way out. 2,000 more slugs followed in the next 11 seconds. Lord Varex's bridge shook hard enough to throw him against the rail. Alarm screamed in 3 octaves. His fleet master was shouting numbers that did not make sense. 12 ships gone. 18. 24. The Vanguard was not being engaged. The Vanguard was being deleted. Where's the fire coming from? Varex roared. From the rocks, my lord. What rocks? All of them. On the holographic map deep beneath the Pacific, Reva Lynn watched red dots wink out one by one. Her face did not change. She had practiced this calm for 20 years. Beside her, Ben Carter was breathing too fast. Helen Voss was the only one smiling. And it was a small private smile, the kind a chess player gives when the trap they set 15 moves ago finally closes. Lunar batteries, fire, Reva said. The far side of the moon lit up. Long, bright lines of rail gun fire stretched across the dark, reaching out toward the Draxan flanks. The shots were slower than the asteroid slugs, but there were thousands of them, and they came from an angle the Draxan shields were not facing. Escort ships, the smaller cruisers that hugged the carriers, began to come apart. Hulls cracked. Reactors blew. The neat Draxan wedge formation lost its left wing in under a minute. Varex tried to give the order to turn, to face the moon, but his fleet master was already shouting again. My lord, contacts from Jupiter. Drone clouds. Tens of thousands. Drones. They came out of the moons. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto. They were hiding under the ice. The drone clouds reached the Draxan rear in a long dark wave. Each drone was small, no bigger than a human child. Each drone carried one shaped charge and one job. They did not try to destroy battleships. They went for sensors, communication arrays, weapon mounts. They blinded the Draxan fleet faster than the fleet could swat them. A Draxan cruiser without sensors is just a very expensive coffin. In the Mars complex beneath Olympus Mons, the plasma lances opened fire. Long burning lines of bright matter crossed the dark and hit Draxan command ships at the heart of the formation. These were not the precise scalpel shots of the asteroid drivers. These were hammers. They did not punch holes. They opened ships like cans. On Earth, civilians did not yet know what was happening. They watched the night sky with shaking hands and saw only distant flickers, like a far-off thunderstorm scene from a quiet porch. A child in Mumbai pointed up and asked her grandmother what the lights were. The grandmother, who had lived through 3 wars and 1 famine, said only, "Something is dying up there, child. Pray it is not us." Above, on the Iron Throat, Lord Varex tried to find someone to blame. His sensor officer was already dead, hit by a shard of his own console. His communications officer was bleeding from the ears. His fleet master stood very straight and very pale and waited for orders that Verex could not yet form. Then the broadcast came. It cut into the Draxan command channels without permission, without static, without warning. Admiral Daniel Hart's face appeared on every screen, in every surviving Draxan ship. He looked the same as he had during the first transmission. Calm, almost gentle, like a teacher disappointed in a slow student. Lord Verex, Hart said. Can you hear me? Verex did not answer. He could not trust his own voice. I will speak anyway, Hart said. You came to my system expecting a planet. You found a system. There is a difference, and I want you to understand it before you die. He paused. We did not build a fleet. Fleets are loud. Fleets need fuel and food and ports. Fleets can be tracked, counted, and matched. We did not want to be matched. So we built something else. We built a place. The whole solar system is the weapon. The rocks shoot. The moons shoot. The dust shoots. There is no flagship to kill. There is no admiral to capture. There is only the place, and the place does not surrender. Verex finally found his voice. You will be answered for this. The Imperium will burn your world to ash. Hart's expression did not change. Pull back, Hart said softly. Or do not. It does not change the result. The line cut. Verex stared at the empty screen. For the first time in his 500-year life, he felt something he did not have a Draxan word for. The closest human word would have been small. He gave the order to retreat. The order to retreat reached the surviving Draxan ships in scattered fragments, because half of them had no working communication arrays left. Some captains heard it. Some did not. Some heard it and ignored it, because Draxan honor said that a warrior who turned his back on a smaller foe was no warrior at all. Those captains died first. Their ships drifted apart in long, slow tumbles, broken open by weapons they could not see coming. The captains who obeyed the order turned their bows toward the asteroid belt and ran. It was the wrong direction. Helen Voss had been waiting 20 years for a Draxan fleet to run that way. She had picked the asteroid belt as a kill zone before she had even chosen her grandchildren's names. She tapped a single command on her console. The belt began to move. Not all of it. Not even most of it. Just a few thousand specific rocks scattered through the wide, drifting field. Each one had a small thruster pack glued to its underside, hidden under loose dust. The thrusters fired together. The rocks did not move fast. They did not need to. They only needed to drift into the right places at the right time. Slow rocks, in great numbers, in a fleet's escape lane, were as deadly as any wall. The Draxan survivors flew straight into them. Some ships tried to weave between the rocks. They mostly succeeded for the first 30 seconds, until the asteroid drivers, the ones that had not yet fired, began to fire from the second line. Slugs came in from angles the captains had not been watching. Engines were taken out, then reactors, then bridges. Within 4 minutes, the entire surviving Draxan vanguard was a slowly tumbling cloud of dead and dying ships, drifting in a circle they could no longer escape. On Earth, the night was very quiet. In a small town in Pakistan, a man named Yusuf sat on his roof with his radio. The radio had been silent for an hour. He had stopped trying to find a station. He just sat with the dead radio in his lap and looked at the sky, where faint orange flashes bloomed and faded between the stars. His wife brought him tea and sat beside him without speaking. They had been married 31 years, and they knew when words were not needed. What is happening? She finally asked. Yusuf thought about it for a long time before he answered. Something is being decided, he said. By people I do not know, in a place I cannot see. I think we are alive because of them. I think tomorrow we will know their names. And I think tomorrow we will be afraid of them. She did not argue. She drank her tea and watched the sky. Lord Verex's flagship, the Iron Throat, was now one of only 43 Draxan ships still capable of movement. The bridge was full of smoke. 2 of his officers were dead on the floor. His fleet master had a piece of metal in his shoulder and was pretending it was not there. Verex stood at the main window and watched his empire's pride die in slow burning pieces. Send a distress signal, he ordered. To the core. Full priority. Tell them everything. His communications officer tried. The console flashed red. He tried again. Red. He tried a 3rd time on a backup array. Red. My lord. The signal cannot leave the system. Something is jamming us at the system edge. A wide net. Every frequency. Every band. We are screaming and nothing is getting out. Verex closed his eyes. He understood, then, the shape of the thing he had walked into. It was not a battle. A battle has two sides shouting at each other. This was a closed room. Whatever happened in this room would stay in this room. The Imperium would not know. The galaxy would not know. The Draxan Vanguard, 400 proud ships, would simply vanish into a quiet little blue system and never come out. He opened his eyes. I want to speak to him, he said. The human admiral. Open a private channel. My lord, our long-range arrays are mostly destroyed. Then use the short-range one. He is close enough. He has been close enough the whole time. The channel opened on the third try. Admiral Hart's face appeared, calm as a still pond. Lord Verex, I wish to discuss terms. There are no terms. Verex's jaw tightened. Every war ends with terms. This was not a war, Hart said. A war is when two species fight to find out who is stronger. We already knew. We have known for 20 years. This was a lesson. A lesson for who? Then what do you want? I want you to live, Hart said simply. I want you to surrender your ship, your crew, and yourself. I want you to be kept alive in a quiet cell on a quiet world for the rest of your long life. I want you to think about what happened here every single day. And I want your empire to never know where you went. You are mad. I am patient. There is a difference. Behind Verex, another of his cruisers exploded silently in the distance. The flash lit up the smoke on the bridge for a moment, then died. Hart leaned slightly closer to his camera. Your fleet is ash, my lord. Your signal is jammed. Your reinforcements will not come, because they will not know to come. You have one choice left. The chair on your bridge, or a chair in our cell. Both are quiet. Only one of them lets you keep breathing. Verex was silent for a long time. Then he reached down and unfastened his ceremonial blade. The blade was older than most human countries. It had belonged to Verex's father and his father's father, and back through 12 generations of Draxan warlords who had carried it into surrender ceremonies on 100 conquered worlds. It had never once been laid down. Until now. Verex set the blade flat on the smoking floor of his bridge. He stepped back from it. His fleet master watched, eyes wet but face proud. Send the surrender code, Verex said. Open all locks. Power down weapons. Let them come aboard. The fleet master obeyed. On the Iron Throat, the lights dimmed to their lowest setting. The weapons cooled. The shields folded back. A long quiet settled over the bridge that none of the crew had ever heard before in their lives. Draxan ships were never quiet. There was always the hum of guns charging, the chatter of officers, the low thunder of engines preparing for the next campaign. This silence was a new thing. It felt heavier than gravity. 20 minutes later, a small human shuttle docked at the flagship's main airlock. 6 humans came through. 3 were soldiers, in simple gray armor with no insignia. 2 were medics, with calm faces and small bags. The 6th was Lieutenant Ben Carter. Ben had not slept in 30 hours. His uniform was wrinkled. He had a fresh bruise on his jaw from when the bunker had shaken during the asteroid driver firing. He looked, in every possible way, like a young man who should not be the one walking into the bridge of a captured Imperial flagship. But he walked in anyway, because Hart had sent him. He stopped 3 paces from Lord Verex. He did not salute. He did not bow. He looked up at the tall gray alien and spoke in clear, polite, careful words. Lord Verex, by the order of Admiral Daniel Hart of the United Defense Command, you are now in human custody. You will not be harmed. You will not be displayed. You will be taken to a place where you will be safe, fed, and quiet. Do you understand? Verex looked down at the small human. He had eaten species smaller than this one for breakfast on 100 conquered worlds. He had never been spoken to with this exact tone in his life. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something almost like courtesy, as if this human was a tax collector, doing a job he did not enjoy but would do correctly. I understand, Verex said. Then please come with me. Verex came. While the surviving Draxan crews were being collected and moved to holding ships, Admiral Hart was already in another room, on another channel, doing the harder part of the day's work. He sat at a small table across from a large screen. The screen showed a map of the galaxy, with the solar system at its center and a faint shimmering web around it. The web was the quiet net. Helen Voss sat beside him. Net is fully active, she said. Nothing in, nothing out. Light, signal, Neutrino, nothing. We are a hole in the galactic map for as long as we want to be. And the Draxan Imperium? Will know they sent 400 ships toward Earth. They will not know what arrived. They will not know what left. They will only know that the fleet went silent. In their internal politics, that is worse than defeat. Defeat has a story. Silence has none. Their council will spend years arguing about what happened. They will not send another fleet because they will not know what they are sending it into. And the others? The watching empires. The Krell heard the original broadcast. So did the Vorith. So did at least 4 trade federations and the listening posts of the old Concord. They all heard a small species tell a big species to come closer. They all watched the Draxan fleet enter our system. They all watched the system go dark. She paused. They all watched no one come out. Hart was quiet for a moment. Good, he said. Daniel. He looked at her. This is the part where you decide what kind of species we become, Helen said. We can drop the quiet net tomorrow and tell the galaxy what we did. We can take the credit. Become famous. Become feared and known. Or we keep the net up. We say nothing. We let the silence do the work. Every empire out there will write its own story about what happened in our system. Each story will be worse than the truth. They will not approach us because they will not know how. They will leave us alone for 100 years, maybe 200, and in that time we will become something even bigger than what we are now. Keep the net up, he said. Let them write their own stories. That is a lonely choice, Daniel. It is a safe one. We can be lonely for a century. We have been lonely for longer. Helen nodded. A few hours later, in a small holding cell deep beneath the Pacific, Lord Varric sat on a clean cot and stared at a clean white wall. The cell was warm. The food was strange but adequate. The lights were soft. There were no guards in his sight, though he knew there were guards. The door opened. Admiral Hart walked in alone, carrying 2 small cups. Tea, Hart said. It is a human drink. You do not have to drink it. Varric took the cup. Why am I alive, he asked. Because dead lords do not learn, Hart said gently. And I want you to learn. He sat down across from the alien lord. He sipped his tea. Then, very softly, he said the same 2 words he had said at the start. Come closer. This time, Varric understood them. 3 months passed. Then 6. Then a year. The world did not throw a parade. There was no victory speech. No flag was planted on a captured ship. Most people on Earth, in the end, never learned exactly what had happened in the dark beyond Mars. They knew only that an alien fleet had arrived, that strange lights had filled the sky for one long night, and that by morning the lights were gone and the sky was empty again. Governments gave careful, vague statements. Newspapers printed cautious headlines. Within a few weeks, the world's attention had drifted back to harvests, elections, weddings, and small daily worries, which was exactly what Hart had wanted. Inside Site 11, the work continued. Helen Voss aged faster than anyone liked. Her hands shook more. Her voice grew softer. But her mind, when it focused on a problem, was still the same sharp blade it had always been. She spent most of her days now teaching younger engineers how the quiet net worked, how to maintain it, how to expand it. She told them, more than once, that the net was not a wall. It was a curtain. A wall keeps people out. A curtain hides what is behind it. The difference mattered. Reva Lynn was promoted to general, a rank no one outside the bunker even knew existed. She did not move into a bigger office. She kept the same small gray room she had always used, with the same chipped mug on her desk and the same picture of her sister on the wall. The picture was old. Her sister had died young, long before the Draxan ultimatum. Reva looked at it sometimes when the work was hard. Ben Carter grew up. It happened gradually, the way most growing up does. He stopped flinching at sudden alarms. He stopped looking to others for permission before speaking. He learned to read the long, quiet pauses of veteran officers and understand what was being said in the silence. By the second year, when Hart asked who should lead the new Outer System Patrol Command, Reva and Helen both said Ben's name without looking at each other. Ben took the command. He was 28. In the holding cell, Lord Varric was kept clean, fed, and alive. He was not chained. He was not beaten. He was given books, in his own language, that humans had quietly translated over the years. He was given puzzles. He was given a small window that looked out onto an artificial garden, where a single tree grew under careful lights. He spoke with Hart once a week. The conversations were not interrogations. They were lessons in both directions. Hart learned about the Draxan Imperium's internal politics, its old wars, its small private cruelties. Verex learned about Earth, slowly, the way a child learns about a country he has only ever seen from a far hill. He never asked to leave. He understood, by the end of the first year, that there was no leaving. Not because the door was locked, though it was. Because there was nowhere to go. The Imperium would kill him on sight if he returned, for the crime of losing the fleet. The galaxy would kill him for the crime of being Draxan. The cell, in a strange way, was the safest place he had ever lived. He found this almost funny. Sometimes he laughed about it, quietly, alone, in the dark. Outside, the galaxy did exactly what Helen had predicted. The Krell sent 3 probes to the edge of the solar system. None of them came back. The quiet net swallowed them politely. The Krell drew their own conclusions, which were wrong, and which were worse than the truth, and they told their neighbors, and their neighbors told theirs. The Vorath, who were old and careful, simply marked the human system on their charts with a single black symbol that men approach with extreme caution. Nothing more, nothing less. Their captains, when they passed near the symbol, gave it a wide berth and did not speak of it. The Old Concord, the oldest political body in this arm of the galaxy, held a closed meeting. The transcript of that meeting was sealed for 50 years. Only one line of it ever leaked. It said, in the language of the Concord, "There is a small blue world. We will not knock on its door." In the second year of the silence, a freighter captain from a minor trading clan strayed too close to the outer edge of the solar system by mistake. His ship was not destroyed. It was simply turned around. Its navigation computers, when he checked them later, had no record of how. The ship was just suddenly facing the other way, drifting calmly back toward open space, with all systems intact and a soft message playing on the main screen in his own language. The message said, "Not today, friend. Travel safely." Admiral Hart retired in the 4th year. He moved to a small house on the coast of Spain. He kept a garden. He grew tomatoes. He drank tea in the mornings and watched the sea. Sometimes, when the sky was very clear, he looked up at the stars and thought about the old gray lord in the cell deep beneath the Pacific and the 2 words that had started everything. He did not regret saying them. He did not feel proud of them either. They had simply been the right words, at the right moment, in the right voice. Humanity had not become loud. Humanity had become careful, quiet, and impossibly patient. The galaxy, in its long old wisdom, had learned to leave the small blue world alone. And somewhere in a clean cell beneath a quiet ocean, Lord Verex finally slept without dreams.